Stay in your lane, bitch! Officer Daniels slaps Doctor. Celine Bennett hard enough to snap her head sideways. Blood trickles from her split lip. Gasps echo through the courtroom, then silence. Complete silence. Daniels towers over her, chest puffed. His partner snickers, hand on his gun belt. Black women like you need to learn respect, he hisses, loud enough for the front row to hear. Judge Harrison glances up, shrugs, returns to his papers. No one moves. No one helps. Court security stares at the floor. Celine memorizes badge numbers as the coppery taste fills her mouth. Her law degree burns in her purse, useless against raw power. Daniels jabs a finger into her shoulder. This isn't over. What would you do if someone humiliated you in public, not knowing you held the power to change their life? They picked the wrong woman to humiliate. Dr. Celine Bennett arrives at Westfield County Courthouse dressed in casual clothes, jeans, and a simple blouse. A renowned civil rights attorney and recent judicial nominee, she's here for a routine traffic violation, planning to handle it quickly before her afternoon appointments. The lobby buzzes with activity. White defendants chat with clerks while minorities wait in silence. Celine approaches the desk where Court Clerk Thomas types at a computer. Traffic violation 27B, she says, sliding her paperwork across the counter. Thomas barely looks up, pushing a form toward her. Fill this out. Could you clarify section 3? It's asking for... He sighs loudly. It's not that complicated. Just read the instructions. A white man approaches the adjacent window. The same clerk smiles, standing to point out each section. Just put your insurance information here, and your contact details here. Take your time, sir. Celine notices Officer Daniels watching from across the room. He nudges his partner, Officer Reynolds, who turns to stare. They whisper, then laugh. She's familiar with that look, the dismissive amusement reserved for those they consider beneath them. Judge Harrison enters the courtroom and proceedings begin. Celine observes from the gallery, noting patterns. College students receive warnings for speeding. A Latino man gets maximum fine for the same offense. A white businessman has his case dismissed entirely after a quiet conversation with the judge. When her case is called, Celine approaches confidently, evidence folder in hand. Your Honor, this ticket claims I was driving 15 miles per hour over the limit on Parkway Avenue Tuesday at 2 p.m. I have phone records showing I was on a conference call during that exact time. Officer Daniels steps forward before she can continue. I clearly remember pulling her over. She was argumentative and disrespectful then, just like she's being now. Judge Harrison scans her evidence with disinterest. The officer's testimony is clear. But my records show... That's enough, Harrison cuts her off. Pay the fine or contest it with proper legal representation. Celine grips her folder tightly as she returns to her seat, watching Daniels smirk at his partner. The courtroom has no idea their treatment of this ordinary citizen will soon destroy their careers. During recess, Celine follows Officer Daniels into the hallway. She activates the recorder app on her phone discreetly, slipping it into her jacket pocket. Officer Daniels, she calls, her voice professional, controlled. I'd like to discuss your testimony about my traffic violation. Daniels turns, using his height to intimidate. Look, lady, I write dozens of tickets daily. You're not special. The ticket states you stopped me Tuesday at 2 p.m. on Parkway Avenue. I was on a recorded video call with my office at that exact time. Maybe you were too busy yapping on your phone to notice being pulled over. His tone sharpens. That's another violation right there. Officer Reynolds appears, standing close enough that Celine can smell his aftershave. Problem here, Daniels? Just another one who thinks the rules don't apply to her? Celine maintains her composure. I'm simply pointing out a factual error. The license plate must have been misread. You calling my partner a liar? Reynolds steps closer. Bold move. She doesn't back away. I'm stating facts. The report contains inaccurate information. Facts. Daniels laughs. Your word against a decorated officer's. Guess whose version the judge believes? Court Security Officer Briggs passes by, noticing the confrontation. Officer Briggs, Celine calls. Could you witness this conversation? I'm trying to resolve a discrepancy in my case. Briggs hesitates, glancing between them. His eyes meet Daniels, then he shakes his head. Not my business. Handle it in court. He walks away quickly. See? Daniels smirks. Nobody cares about your complaints. Pay your fine and learn to drive slower next time. As they turn to leave, Reynolds leans toward Daniels. These people always think they're special. The words carry just loudly enough for Celine to hear. She stands alone in the corridor, one hand clenched around her phone, the recording still running. Her law degree and judicial nomination mean nothing in this moment. She's just another black woman being dismissed by men with badges. But unlike the countless others who've stood where she stands now, Celine has the power to ensure consequences. They've just handed her exactly what she needs, documented evidence of their contempt. Celine returns to the courtroom, taking her seat in the gallery. She watches Officers Daniels and Reynolds approach Judge Harrison during a break. They speak in hushed tones, all three glancing her way several times. When court resumes, Harrison calls her case again. His tone has hardened. Miss Bennett, it's come to my attention that you accosted Officer Daniels during recess with accusations about his professional conduct. The courtroom falls silent. All eyes turn to her. Your Honor, I simply attempted to discuss a discrepancy. Silence. Harrison pounds his gavel. Contempt of court behavior will not be tolerated in my courtroom. Officer Daniels steps forward, standing at attention. She accused me of falsifying reports, Your Honor. Claimed I lied under oath. Harrison's eyes narrow. These are serious allegations against our officers. Do you have any actual evidence of misconduct, Ms. Bennett? Celine reaches for her phone. Yes, I recorded our conversation. Phones are prohibited from being used to record in this courthouse, Harrison interrupts sharply. Bailiff, confiscate that device immediately. The bailiff approaches, hand extended. When Celine hesitates, he reaches for the phone himself. This is illegal seizure, she protests. Now, Ms. Bennett, Harrison continues, ignoring her objection, you will apologize to Officer Daniels for these unfounded accusations. The courtroom watches, spectators shifting uncomfortably. Some avoid her gaze, others stare with morbid fascination. Celine stands straight, voice steady. With respect, Your Honor, I cannot apologize for seeking the truth. Harrison's face reddens. You will apologize or face contempt charges. Your Honor, the Constitution protects— That's it! Harrison slams his gavel again. 1 night in holding for contempt. Perhaps that will teach you respect for this court and its officers. Officer Daniels steps forward eagerly, grabbing Celine's arm with unnecessary force. She winces, but doesn't resist. She's resisting, Daniels announces loudly. Before anyone can challenge this obvious lie, his hand strikes her face, the same slap from the opening hook. The crack echoes through the courtroom. A few gasps rise from the gallery, quickly silenced. Most spectators look away. Judge Harrison merely notes something in his file, not even acknowledging the assault. Add resisting to the charges, Harrison orders. Take her to holding. Blood wells at the corner of Celine's mouth as Daniels grips her arm, pulling her toward the exit. She walks with dignity, despite her throbbing cheek. Should have just paid the ticket, Daniels whispers close to her ear. Celine remains silent, memorizing every face that witnessed her assault and did nothing. The security officer who looked away. The court reporter who continued typing as if nothing happened. The young attorney in the front row who pretended to check his phone. Each complicit face becomes a mental photograph, evidence of a broken system she now has personal cause to dismantle. They believe they've won, unaware they've just handed her the weapon that will destroy them. The holding cell smells of bleach and sweat. Celine sits alone on the hard bench, her legal mind cataloging every violation of procedure and law she's witnessed today, mentally drafting the complaint she'll file not as an ordinary citizen, but as someone with the authority to ensure consequences. She touches her swollen cheek, wincing slightly. The skin has already begun to bruise. Officer Morris, the female intake officer, notices as she passes. She stops, keys jingling at her belt. "That looks bad. Do you need medical attention? What I need is my phone call." Morris studies her for a moment, then nods. "Follow me." At the phone, Celine dials her executive assistant's number from memory. Diane answers on the second ring. "It's me," Celine says quietly. "I need you to contact Governor Phillips immediately." "Dr. Bennett? What's happened?" "Tell him I've just experienced firsthand what we discussed regarding Westfield County Court." Celine keeps her voice low, aware of Morris watching. "And call Stephen at the State Judicial Review Board. Have him pull all records for Judge Harrison and Officers Daniels and Reynolds." "Are you okay?" Concern fills Diane's voice. "Not yet. But I will be." She glances at Morris, who now looks uncertain. "Also, contact Barbara at the Tribune. Tell her I'll have a story for her tomorrow with documentation." Officer Morris shifts her weight, realization dawning that this detainee isn't an ordinary troublemaker. "One more thing," Celine adds. "Call my brother Michael. Tell him to bring the sealed envelope from my home safe. He knows which one to the governor's office immediately." After hanging up, she turns to Morris. "Officer, I'd like to officially report an assault by Officer Daniels." Morris looks uncomfortable. "You should know Daniels and Judge Harrison are close friends. Nothing will come of a complaint." "I'm still filing it," Celine replies calmly. "And I'd like your badge number as witness to my current condition." "Look, I'm just trying to help. Making enemies won't end well for you." "I appreciate your concern," Celine says. "But justice isn't about making friends." Back in her cell, she lies on the bench, eyes closed but mind racing. The system that humiliated her doesn't realize she's spent her career preparing for this moment, studying patterns of corruption, gathering data on biased sentencing, building networks of allies in positions of power. They see only a black woman they can intimidate. They don't see Dr. Celine Bennett, the governor's hand-picked nominee to reshape the justice system. She mentally recites the names: Officer Daniels, Officer Reynolds, Judge Harrison, Court Clerk Thomas, Security Officer Briggs, each one a link in a chain of corruption she now has cause to break. Morris returns an hour later, her expression nervous. "Someone from the governor's office called. You're being released immediately." Celine rises without surprise. The wheels are already in motion. The power dynamic is about to flip, and they won't even see it coming. The next morning, Judge Harrison enters his chambers to find a formal notice on his desk. The State Judicial Review Board has scheduled an emergency hearing regarding his conduct, specifically citing yesterday's proceedings with Dr. Celine Bennett. His hand trembles slightly as he reaches for the phone. "Daniels, what the hell did you do yesterday?" he demands when the officer answers. "Some woman filed a complaint with the review board." "Just some entitled troublemaker," Daniels dismisses. "We've handled worse." "The complaint is signed by Dr. Celine Bennett, State Judicial Nominee, the governor's pick for the Superior Court." The line goes silent. Across town, Celine sits in Governor Phillips's office, her cheeks still visibly bruised despite makeup. "This is exactly why I nominated you," Phillips says, pacing behind his desk. "The system needs someone who's experienced its failures firsthand." "I want more than just personal justice," Celine explains. "What happened to me happens daily to people without my connections." Phillips nods solemnly. "The evidence from your phone recording is damning. We recovered it when you were released. Judge Harrison has been temporarily suspended pending investigation. And the officers? Internal Affairs opened an investigation this morning. Celine slides a folder across his desk. These are 5 similar cases from Westfield Court in the past month alone. Minority defendants, excessive sentencing, police misconduct, all ignored by Harrison. Phillips flips through the documents, his expression darkening. How did you compile this so quickly? I've been tracking these patterns for years. Yesterday just made it personal. In the police precinct, Daniels and Reynolds are called into Captain Lawson's office. The captain's expression is thunderous as they enter. What exactly happened with Dr. Bennett yesterday? He demands.
Standard contempt case, Daniels shrugs. She was disrespectful to the court.
Lawson slides a photograph across the desk. Celine's bruised face, professionally photographed for evidence. This doesn't look standard to me. He presses a button on his computer. The audio recording from Celine's phone fills the room. Reynolds pales visibly. Captain, we didn't know who she was. That's the problem, Lawson snaps. You shouldn't treat anyone this way, regardless of who they are. They think this is about one incident, unaware she's dismantling their entire corrupt system. Barbara Chen's front-page expose dominates the Tribune's morning edition. Judicial nominee assaulted in courtroom, exposes pattern of abuse. Celine's bruised face stares out beside stark statistics on disproportionate sentencing in Westfield Court. Online, the story explodes. Number sign justice. For Celine trends nationally. Social media floods with similar stories. Citizens sharing experiences of bias and misconduct in Westfield Court. At the police station, Internal Affairs investigators interview every officer who witnessed the incident. Officer Morris sits stiffly in the interview room. I saw her injury in holding, Morris testifies, despite the cold shoulders she's received all morning. And I heard Officers Daniels and Reynolds laughing about teaching her a lesson afterward. Were you aware of previous incidents? The investigator asks. Morris hesitates, then commits. Yes, multiple. It was expected behavior. Commissioner Bryant calls an emergency press conference at noon. Camera lights flash as he approaches the podium. We take these allegations extremely seriously, he states, sweat beading on his forehead. The officers involved have been placed on administrative leave pending investigation. Meanwhile, Celine presents her evidence to the State Bar Association Ethics Committee. Documents cover the long table court transcripts, sentencing records, statistical analyses showing clear patterns of discrimination. This isn't about one judge or 2 officers, she explains, her bruise now a stark purple against her brown skin. It's about a culture that enables abuse of power. The committee chair, Justice Rivera, reviews her documentation with growing concern. Dr. Bennett, this is extensive work. How long have you been gathering this evidence? 3 years. Since I first noticed the sentencing disparities while defending clients there. In his living room, Harrison paces before the television, watching coverage of his suspension. His phone rings the chief judge of the district. Walter, this is bad, the voice warns. The governor is calling for a complete audit of your cases for the past 5 years. This is ridiculous, Harrison fumes. Over one incident? It's not just one incident. They have statistics, Walter, documented patterns that are indefensible. Across town, Daniels and Reynolds meet at a bar, both nursing untouched beers. This will blow over, Daniels insists. It always does. Reynolds shakes his head. They're saying the governor fast-tracked her nomination specifically to address police misconduct in courts. So what? So she's not just some random person we can intimidate. She's about to become our boss's boss. The public thinks this is just beginning, but Celine's master plan is already several steps ahead. Have you ever witnessed someone misuse their authority and wished you could see justice served? The State Judicial Review Board works through the weekend, expediting its investigation. They subpoena court records, security footage, and testimony from courthouse staff. Evidence mounts hour by hour, a damning portrait of systematic discrimination and unchecked power. Meanwhile, Celine appears on national morning television, her composure powerful against the backdrop of her still visible bruise. "This isn't about my experience," she explains, voice steady. "It's about transforming a system that treats people differently based on race, income, and status." The interview goes viral within hours. Legal experts across the country weigh in, most supporting Celine's calls for reform. "What we're seeing in Westfield Court represents a failure of oversight that likely exists in many jurisdictions," notes a prominent law professor. Behind closed doors, police union representatives meet with Daniels and Reynolds. "This isn't going away," the union rep warns, pushing settlement papers across the table. "Dr. Bennett has declined all settlement offers. She wants full accountability." "She's making an example of us," Daniels complains, tie loosened, eyes bloodshot. "You made an example of yourself when you slapped a judicial nominee in open court," the rep replies bluntly. Judge Harrison receives more bad news from his attorney. The review board has expanded its investigation to include potential financial improprieties, specifically dismissed tickets and reduced sentences for friends of the court. "That's nothing to do with this Bennett woman." Harrison paces his living room, panic rising. "Once they started looking, they found other issues," his attorney explains grimly. "They're reviewing every decision you've made for the past decade." At the governor's office, Celine stands before a whiteboard covered with flowcharts and timelines. The newly appointed Judicial Reform Task Force listens intently. "We need more than just removing bad actors," she tells the assembled experts. "We need structural change." She outlines her comprehensive plan: mandatory bias training for all court personnel, independent review of sentencing patterns, civilian oversight committees, and transparent disciplinary procedures. "This plan could transform our entire state judicial system," Governor Phillips observes, studying the detailed proposals. "That's the goal," Celine replies. "Justice shouldn't depend on who you are or who you know." The task force members exchange glances, impressed by the scope, but aware of the resistance they'll face from entrenched interests. As the public focuses on punishment, Celine's true power play is about to be revealed. The governor calls an unprecedented press conference. News crews jostle for position as the room fills beyond capacity. Celine stands beside Governor Phillips, now dressed in formal attire befitting her true position, no longer the casual citizen who entered that courtroom days ago. Phillips approaches the microphone, his expression solemn. "Today, I'm proud to announce not only Dr. Celine Bennett's confirmation to the Superior Court bench, but also her appointment as the first commissioner of our new Judicial Accountability Commission." Camera flashes intensify as reporters lean forward. "What many don't know," Phillips continues, "is that Dr. Bennett's experience in Westfield Court was part of her own undercover investigation into reports of systematic abuse of power." The revelation hits like a thunderclap. News anchors scramble to update their reporting, smartphones light up with notifications, and social media erupts with reactions. Celine steps to the podium, her bearing regal despite the fading bruise on her cheek. "3 months ago, we received dozens of complaints about treatment of minorities in Westfield Court. Instead of launching a standard investigation that could be undermined or obstructed, I chose to experience the system as an ordinary citizen." She displays evidence on the screen behind her: statistical analyses of sentencing disparities, hidden camera footage of backroom deals, testimony from former defendants, all compiled before her own experience in that courtroom. "The assault I experienced wasn't planned," she acknowledges, touching her cheek lightly. "But it revealed the true culture of that courthouse better than any formal investigation could have." Across town, Officer Daniels watches the press conference in horror, remote control dropping from his hand. "She set us up!" he shouts at the television, knocking over his coffee mug. Reynolds shakes his head slowly. "No, man. We set ourselves up. She just gave us the opportunity to show who we really are. At the courthouse, staff members gather around break room televisions, faces tense as Celine outlines the first phase of reform. Effective immediately, Judge Harrison's docket will be reviewed by a panel of independent judges. Every case where sentencing exceeded guidelines will be reevaluated. Court Clerk Thomas slumps in his chair, remembering his dismissive treatment of Dr. Bennett that morning. Back at the press conference, a reporter raises his hand. "Dr. Bennett, did you plan to be assaulted that day?" "Of course not," she answers firmly. "I plan to observe and document." The physical assault simply revealed how normalized such behavior had become. Another reporter follows up. "Some are suggesting this was entrapment. How do you respond?" "I entered that courtroom with a genuine minor traffic citation. I didn't invent scenarios or provoke responses. I merely experienced the system as countless citizens do daily. The difference is, I had the power to do something about it." The police commissioner steps forward, visibly uncomfortable in the spotlight. "We fully support the investigation into Officers Daniels and Reynolds. We're conducting a department-wide review of courthouse conduct protocols. Governor Phillips concludes with the announcement that sends shockwaves through the legal community. Dr. Bennett will be sworn in as judge next week, and her first assignment will be overseeing the reform of the very court where she was assaulted." Later that evening, in the privacy of the governor's office, Celine reviews security footage from the courthouse captured since the investigation began. On screen, Judge Harrison and several officers panic, shredding documents and deleting files from computers. "They don't realize we already have copies of everything," the governor observes, watching the desperate attempt at cover-up. "People who abuse power never expect consequences," Celine replies, her expression composed. "That's why the system stays broken." She turns away from the screen, looking out at the city lights below. This was never about personal revenge. It's about fixing a system that fails ordinary people every day. The governor studies her profile, impressed by her calm determination after everything she's experienced. "Most people in your position would want payback." "Justice isn't payback," she answers. "It's correction. It's healing. It's making sure what happened to me never happens to anyone else." The footage continues playing, documenting the frantic attempts to hide years of misconduct evidence that will now become part of a much larger case against a corrupt system that believed itself untouchable. The corrupt officials think the worst is over, but Celine's reform is just beginning. The fallout is swift and comprehensive. Within days, the state attorney general announces a grand jury investigation into Westfield County Court, focusing on judicial misconduct, excessive force, and civil rights violations. News vans become a permanent fixture outside the courthouse. Protesters gather daily, their signs demanding justice and reform. What started as outrage over one incident has catalyzed a movement for systemic change. Judge Harrison faces 12 counts of judicial misconduct, 3 ethics violations, and potential criminal charges for evidence tampering. His attorney negotiates desperately for immunity in exchange for testimony against others in the system. "You need to give them something substantial," his lawyer advises during a tense meeting at Harrison's now emptied office. "There are bigger fish they want." "I'm a respected judge with 30 years on the bench," Harrison protests, his arrogance still intact despite his circumstances. "You're a suspended judge facing potential disbarment and prison time," his attorney corrects. "The forensic accountants found the pattern in your sentencing. The racial disparity alone is damning." Officers Daniels and Reynolds are suspended without pay. The police union initially stands firm in their defense, issuing statements about rush to judgment and proper context. But as evidence mounts, including testimony from fellow officers about previous unreported incidents, their support weakens. "We can't defend the indefensible," the union president admits in a closed-door meeting. "The footage speaks for itself." Court Clerk Thomas and 3 other administrative staff are placed on leave pending investigation into allegations they helped cover up misconduct and selectively processed cases based on defendants' race or status. Celine works methodically, reviewing hundreds of cases handled by Harrison. She establishes a special hotline for people who believe they received unfair treatment. The response overwhelms the system, over 500 calls in the first week. Each of these calls represents someone who lost faith in our justice system, Celine tells her staff during their morning briefing. We will review every single one. Her team grows, occupying an entire floor of the State Justice Building. Law students volunteer to help sift through case files. Retired judges offer their expertise to identify problematic patterns in sentencing. The media covers the story relentlessly. Legal experts debate the implications for judicial oversight nationwide. Civil rights organizations praise the unprecedented transparency of the investigation. What Dr. Bennett has done, explains a prominent civil rights attorney on a cable news panel, is pull back the curtain on practices that have been normalized for decades. In a closed board meeting, Police Commissioner Bryant faces the Oversight Committee. How could this culture exist within our department? Demands Board Chair Lawton, slapping a report on the table. Bryant shifts uncomfortably. We've become too insulated, he admits. Officers protecting officers regardless of conduct. Fix it, Lawton orders, or we'll find someone who will. Bryant nods, knowing his own position hangs in the balance. Meanwhile, Celine implements immediate reforms. Cameras in all courtrooms with public access to footage, anonymous reporting systems for misconduct, and independent review of sentencing patterns for statistical disparities. Transparency is our most powerful tool, she explains at a press conference announcing the changes. Sunlight is the best disinfectant for corruption. The courthouse staff adjusts to the new normal, some reluctantly, others with relief that long-ignored problems are finally addressed. I've wanted to report issues for years, confides a veteran court reporter to the Ethics Committee. But there was nowhere safe to turn. Officer Morris receives a promotion to lead the newly formed Court Conduct Unit, tasked with monitoring officer behavior in legal settings. She faces backlash from colleagues for her testimony, but stands firm. I became an officer to serve justice, she tells her new team during their first meeting. Not to protect those who abuse their badges. Some officers refuse to work with her, calling her a traitor. Others, particularly younger officers and minorities, see her as a role model for integrity. The blue wall of silence doesn't protect justice, Morris states when asked about the divided response. It only protects misconduct. Judge Harrison, under house arrest while awaiting trial, receives a visitor. His former colleague, Judge Winters, now tasked with reviewing his case files. Why are you here? Harrison asks bitterly, letting him into the living room where case files and legal papers cover every surface. To understand how we went so wrong, Winters replies, declining the offered seat. And to tell you the review board wants your full cooperation. Others are implicated, Walter. Judges in 3 other counties. Harrison pales visibly. This is bigger than me. It always was, Winters agrees. We just didn't want to see it. As the investigation expands, Celine presents her preliminary findings to the state Supreme Court. The evidence reveals not isolated incidents, but interconnected patterns across multiple jurisdictions. Judges, prosecutors, and officers operating with implicit bias and explicit protection. What we've uncovered isn't just about individual bad actors, she explains to the solemn justices. It's about a system that enables and protects them. The Chief Justice, initially skeptical of the investigation's scope, reviews the data with growing concern. This requires a statewide response. That's exactly what we're prepared to implement, Celine confirms, revealing Phase 2 of her reform plan, a comprehensive overhaul of judicial oversight, training, and accountability. Back in her office, Celine reviews victim impact statements from people affected by Harrison's biased sentencing. Stories of lives derailed by excessive punishments, families separated, careers destroyed, all showing clear patterns based on race and economic status. Dr. Bennett, her assistant interrupts, the governor is on line 1. Tell him I'll call back, Celine replies, not looking up from the statements. These people have waited years for someone to listen. The governor can wait 10 minutes. As predicted, the resistance to reform grows. Anonymous threats arrive at Celine's office. Conservative legal groups file motions challenging the commission's authority. Police unions issue statements about anti-law enforcement bias. Celine remains undeterred. We anticipated resistance, she tells her team during a security briefing. It only confirms we're on the right track. The reformers gain unexpected allies as the evidence becomes impossible to ignore. Veteran officers step forward, tired of the corruption tarnishing their profession. Court employees provide key documents showing systematic discrimination. Even some retired judges offer testimony about the pressures they faced to maintain the status quo. I regret my silence, admits a former family court judge in closed testimony. We knew what was happening, but speaking out seemed impossible. 3 months into the investigation, patterns emerge connecting judicial misconduct to political pressure and financial interests. Cases involving certain corporations consistently received favorable treatment. Environmental violations were routinely dismissed. Civil rights complaints disappeared into procedural dead ends. Follow the money, Celine instructs her financial investigators. Corrupt systems always leave a trail. The trail leads to campaign contributions, consulting contracts, and real estate deals benefiting judges who ruled favorably for specific interests. The web of corruption extends beyond the courthouse to City Hall, the business community, and even state legislators. Governor Phillips reviews the latest findings with growing alarm. This is explosive, Celine. There will be serious pushback. Justice isn't meant to be popular, she responds. It's meant to be just. As the scope widens, national attention intensifies. Legal reform advocates cite the Bennett model as a template for investigations in other jurisdictions. Law schools host symposiums analyzing the methodology and findings. Through it all, Celine maintains her focus on the individuals harmed by the system she's dismantling. She meets personally with families affected by biased sentencing, listening to their stories and ensuring their cases receive proper review. The system failed you, she tells a mother whose son received 10 years for a nonviolent offense that typically earns probation. But we're working to make it right. By the 6-month mark, the first wave of reforms shows measurable results. Civilian complaints addressed within 72 hours, body cam footage automatically reviewed for any use of force incident, and preliminary data showing more consistent sentencing across demographic groups. This is just the beginning, Celine reminds her team as they mark the milestone. Changing policies is relatively easy. Changing culture takes sustained effort. As the system begins to transform, those who abused their power face their own day in court, with Celine presiding. 3 months later, Judge Dr. Celine Bennett sits on the bench in Courtroom 3B, the same room where she was assaulted. The irony is lost on no one. The gallery is packed with media, legal observers, and citizens who've followed the case. Security is heightened, metal detectors installed at every entrance. Officer Daniels enters in handcuffs, no longer in uniform. His attorney looks grim beside him. Gone is the swagger, the certainty of immunity. His shoulders slump under the weight of the charges. The court calls the disciplinary hearing of former Officer James Daniels, Celine announces, her voice steady and professional. Daniels avoids eye contact as the clerk reads the charges: assault, excessive force, false testimony, civil rights violations. The list continues for nearly 2 minutes. Evidence presentation begins. Body camera footage shows Daniels' pattern of behavior differential treatment based on race, unnecessary force, fabricated charges. Court records reveal suspicious patterns in his arrests and testimony. Statistical analysis demonstrates the impact of his actions on minority communities. The evidence is overwhelming witness testimony, pattern evidence from previous complaints that were buried or dismissed. His own colleagues testify about a culture of intimidation and bias. When Daniels finally speaks, his arrogance has vanished. "I never thought about the impact of my actions," he admits, voice barely audible. "The badge meant I was always right." Celine remains impassive, her questions precise and focused on facts rather than emotion. "Officer Daniels, did you receive training on proper conduct in courtroom settings?" "Yes, Your Honor." "And were you aware that physical force against a non-threatening civilian violates department policy?" "Yes, Your Honor." "Did you consider the consequences of your actions that day?" A long pause. "No, Your Honor." "I didn't think there would be any." The proceedings continue methodically. Reynolds testifies next, having accepted a plea deal for his testimony about the broader culture of misconduct. "It wasn't just us," Reynolds admits, refusing to meet Daniels' glare. "It was expected. Certain judges would look the other way if we handled problem defendants." "And Judge Harrison was one of those judges?" Celine asks. "Yes. He made it clear which defendants deserved special attention." Judge Harrison's hearing follows. Once imperious, he now appears small and defensive. His testimony implicates other judges and court officials in a years-long pattern of discriminatory practices. "We called it community management," Harrison testifies, trying to frame his actions in bureaucratic language. "Keeping certain neighborhoods in line through stricter enforcement." The courtroom murmurs with disgust. "So you intentionally applied different standards of justice based on race and economic status," Celine clarifies. Harrison squirms. "Not officially, but it was understood." When all testimony concludes, Celine delivers her ruling. The courtroom falls silent as she speaks. "The foundation of our justice system is equal treatment under law. When those entrusted with upholding justice instead pervert it, they undermine the very fabric of our society." Daniels stares at the floor as she continues. "Officer Daniels, your actions reflect not just a momentary lapse but a pattern of abuse enabled by a corrupt system. Your punishment must reflect both individual accountability and the need for systemic deterrence." Her ruling is measured but firm. Daniels receives a 5-year sentence with no possibility of early parole, permanent revocation of his law enforcement credentials, and mandatory community service in the neighborhoods he once patrolled. For Harrison, the penalty is even steeper: disbarment, 15 years for corruption and civil rights violations, and full financial restitution to victims of his biased sentencing. "The punishment reflects not only your actions against me," Celine explains, "but the hundreds of lives damaged by your abuse of power. Justice demands accountability at every level." As officers lead Daniels away, he finally meets Celine's gaze. No words are exchanged, but understanding passes between them. The system that empowered him has been fundamentally altered. Outside the courthouse, protesters who once demanded justice now celebrate reform. Signs read, "Equal justice under law," and "Thank you, Judge Bennett." Celine addresses the media briefly before departing. Today marks not an ending, but a beginning. True justice requires vigilance and continuous improvement. With individual accountability established, Celine turns to her ultimate goal, changing the system itself. 1 year later, the state judicial system operates under new protocols established by Celine's Accountability Commission. The transformation is visible in both physical spaces and procedural changes. Courtrooms feature transparent reporting mechanisms, sentencing review panels, and community oversight boards. Digital displays in courthouse lobbies track case outcomes by demographic groups, ensuring transparency. Statistics tell the story more powerfully than any speech could. Sentencing disparities between racial groups down by 48%.
civilian complaints addressed within 72 hours, and public confidence in the courts rising steadily in polls. The changes once deemed impossible have become the new normal. Governor Phillips hosts a conference for judicial representatives from 12 states interested in implementing similar reforms. The auditorium buzzes with energy as teams compare notes and share challenges. What Dr. Bennett created wasn't just local change, Phillips tells the assembled officials. It's a blueprint for national transformation. Celine presents the data with her characteristic precision, highlighting both successes and ongoing challenges. Graphs display the dramatic shifts in sentencing patterns, complaint resolutions, and public trust metrics. Reform isn't a single action, but a continuous process, she explains, gesturing to a timeline showing implementation phases. We've made progress, but biases run deep in any system. New training programs for judges, officers, and court staff focus on implicit bias recognition and prevention. Virtual reality simulations place participants in scenarios designed to reveal unconscious prejudices. Monthly review sessions analyze decisions for potential bias patterns. Every courthouse now displays a judicial conduct code prominently, with clear reporting procedures for violations. Anonymous reporting systems protect whistleblowers, and independent review ensures complaints aren't buried. Officer Morris, now Captain Morris, leads the expanded court conduct unit that has become a model for departments nationwide. Under her leadership, the unit monitors officer behavior, investigates complaints, and provides continuous training. The key was changing the culture, Morris explains to new recruits. We protect people's rights, not each other's misconduct. Former Officer Reynolds, serving community service as part of his reduced sentence, speaks to police academy classes about the dangers of unchecked authority. His testimony serves as a powerful warning. I thought the badge gave me power, he tells cadets, his expression somber. But real power comes from community trust. In Westfield Court, now renamed Unity Justice Center, the waiting room displays quarterly statistics on case outcomes by demographic groups, ensuring transparency and accountability. Gone are the intimidating security measures and confusing procedures that once disadvantaged certain defendants. Court Clerk Thomas's replacement, Clerk Diaz, implements a new case management system that randomly assigns cases to judges and tracks sentencing patterns for review. The old system relied on relationships, Diaz explains to visitors from other jurisdictions. The new one relies on equity and data. National legal organizations recognize the state's transformation with awards and case studies. Law schools update their ethics curriculum to include Celine's reforms as required reading. Media coverage shifts from sensational headlines about corrupt officials to thoughtful analysis of systemic change. A prominent law journal publishes The Bennett Model, Transforming Justice Through Transparency. Celine continues to preside over cases, maintaining the same calm authority whether dealing with traffic violations or major crimes. Her courtroom becomes known for its fairness and efficiency. The reform isn't about me, she reminds her staff during their weekly review. It's about ensuring everyone receives the same justice, regardless of who they are. As the system evolves, Celine faces her greatest challenge, ensuring the reforms survive beyond her tenure. 5 years later, Dr. Celine Bennett stands in her chambers, preparing to leave the bench. Morning light streams through the window, illuminating the framed documents on her wall, the original complaint that started it all, statistical analyses showing the transformation of the court system, and photographs of families reunited after wrongful convictions were overturned. The governor has nominated her to the state Supreme Court, a position from which she can strengthen and protect the reforms she implemented. A knock sounds at her door. Judge Omar Washington, her replacement, enters. Am I interrupting, Your Honor? Celine smiles. Not at all. And please, it's Celine now. This is your courtroom starting tomorrow. Washington, a former public defender from the same neighborhood where Celine grew up, looks around the office.
His eyes linger on the photographs, the commendations, the visible legacy of her work. "I still remember watching the news when you were assaulted in this very courthouse," he says quietly. "It changed everything for me." "How so?" Celine asks, placing her personal items in a cardboard box. "It showed me that change is possible, even in systems that seem permanently broken." They walk through the courthouse together, passing through spaces transformed under her leadership. The building itself feels different, more accessible, more transparent, more humane. Digital information boards display real-time data on case processing. Community volunteers assist visitors at information desks. Officers and staff reflect the diversity of the community they serve. In the main courtroom, a plaque reads, "Equal justice under law actions, not words." "Your reforms have become the national standard," Washington notes as they pause before the plaque. 12 states have adopted the Bennett model. "And yet we still have so far to go," Celine replies. "Systems don't change overnight. People resist losing the power they're accustomed to wielding." They pause at the security desk, where Officer Williams, a young officer who joined after the reforms, greets them warmly. "Last day, Judge Bennett? We'll miss you around here." "The work continues," Celine assures him. "Just from a different bench." Outside, Celine notices an older man watching from across the street, former Officer Daniels, released after serving his sentence. Their eyes meet briefly. He nods once, then walks away. "Was that?" Washington begins. "A reminder," Celine finishes, "of why we do this work." At her farewell ceremony that afternoon, speakers from community organizations, legal associations, and government offices celebrate her impact. The courthouse that once witnessed her humiliation now honors her legacy. Governor Phillips presents her with the State Justice Medal. Dr. Bennett didn't just change laws or procedures, he tells the audience. She changed our conception of what justice means in practice, not just in theory. When Celine steps to the podium, the room falls silent. 5 years ago, I experienced firsthand what countless citizens had endured for decades, she begins. The difference wasn't the treatment, it was the power to change it. She surveys the diverse faces before her, judges, officers, staff, and citizens united in purpose. True justice isn't about punishment but transformation, not just of individuals but of systems, and that transformation begins when we refuse to accept that this is just how things are. Judge Washington approaches to present her with a gavel inscribed with the words that have become her signature phrase, "Justice sees no status, only humanity." How would you use your position of power to create lasting change in a broken system? As Celine leaves the courthouse for the final time as its judge, a young law student approaches for an autograph. "Any advice for someone who wants to follow in your footsteps?" the student asks. Celine smiles. "Remember that power isn't meant to elevate you above others, it's meant to elevate others alongside you." If you enjoyed Celine's powerful journey of justice and transformation, show your support by hitting that like button. Your likes help more people discover these compelling stories of courage and accountability. Don't miss our next dramatic tale of underdogs rising against corruption and making powerful change. Subscribe to Beat Stories now to get notifications for all our upcoming narratives of justice served and systems transformed. Join our growing community of viewers who appreciate stories that blend tension, moral complexity, and satisfying resolution. Like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below about what you do in Celine's position.
One story can wake up a crowd. One moment of clarity can crack years of silence. At Beat Stories, we find those moments, and we share them loud and clear. If this made you think, hit subscribe. This is just the beginning.